The loudest person in the room is usually the one trying hardest to hide their guilt. Let me ask you something, my friends. Have you ever been blamed? Not for what you did, but for what you didn't say. That silence you held on to, that calm you fought so hard to maintain. Suddenly, that becomes the problem. Suddenly, you become the villain, not because you hurt them, but because you stopped playing their game. That's what this video is about. They'll blame your silence because they can't handle their guilt. And by the end of this, you'll never feel bad for being quiet again. You'll never explain your peace to people who thrive in chaos. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in a room that's filled with smoke. Not fire, not chaos. Just a thick, lingering fog. You didn't cause it. You didn't light a match. But you're the only one not choking. You're the only one calm, silent, unbothered. And because you're not panicking like the others, they start pointing at you. Why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you helping? See, the problem isn't your silence. The problem is their guilt. And your silence. It just makes it too visible to ignore. People don't hate silence because it's empty. They hate it because it's full of reflection, full of truth, full of the things they've buried and now have to face. Your silence becomes a mirror, and when they look into it, they don't see peace, they see themselves, and that terrifies them. That's why they attack. That's why they twist the story. That's why they say you're the one who left them in the dark, when really, they were always hiding from the light. Quote me on this. Guilt screams the loudest when silence walks in, because silence doesn't need defense. It doesn't try to win, it just is. And people who have something to hide, they can't stand that. They need noise to cover the echo of their own decisions. They need you to react, to yell, to beg, to explain, so they don't have to explain to themselves what they did. But you're not giving them that anymore. Not today, not ever again. My friends, you have to understand something. They'll call you cold. They'll call you heartless. They'll say you changed. But none of that is real. What's real is the freedom you found in silence. What's real is the boundary you created when you stopped bleeding for people who kept cutting you. What's real is the strength you discovered when you realized you don't owe anyone access to your peace. Don't let them pull you back into noise. Don't let their guilt become your responsibility. Your silence is not a punishment. It's not a weapon. It's a decision, and it's one of the most powerful decisions you'll ever make. Because once you stop dancing to their music, they realize they were never in control of the rhythm. They were just scared you'd learn how to walk alone. So, stay with me. Because in this video, we're going to expose exactly why they panic when you go quiet, and how to use that silence to rebuild yourself, piece by powerful piece. You're not weak, you're wise, you're not running, you're rising. And if you're ready to step fully into that strength, write this in the comments right now. My silence is power. And don't forget, tap the like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me. This is just the beginning. Number 1, they'll call you cold because your silence burns. The truth doesn't burn until it touches the guilty. Have you noticed how the moment you stop arguing, explaining, or defending yourself, suddenly you're the villain? You were just trying to find your peace, and now you're being called cold, distant, arrogant, heartless. Not because you hurt anyone, but because you stopped letting them hurt you. Let that sink in. They weren't wounded by what you did. They were exposed by what you didn't do. Let me paint you a picture, my friends. Imagine you're a lighthouse on a cliff, calm, still, unmoving. The storm rages below, waves crash, winds scream, but you don't flinch, you don't shout, you don't beg the storm to stop, you just stand there. And because you didn't panic, because you didn't react, they blame you for the storm. That's how people who live in chaos operate. They don't understand stillness. They fear it. Because in stillness, there's clarity. And clarity makes it harder to lie to themselves. You might have asked yourself, Why are they treating me like I'm the one who walked away when they were the ones who pushed me? Why does my silence bother them more than their own actions? And here's the answer. They know what they did. They just hoped you'd never go silent long enough to make them face it. You see, silence doesn't just mean you're done speaking, it means you're done playing. It means they can no longer use your emotions to justify their actions. It means they lost their favorite excuse, you. As long as you were reacting, yelling, explaining, they could twist the narrative. They could say, look, see how angry they are, see how dramatic, see how unstable. But now you've gone quiet. Now they've got nothing but themselves to answer to. And that silence, it burns. Because here's the truth. People will set you on fire and then call you heartless when you stop warming them. And when they realize you're not going to run after them anymore, not going to beg them to understand you anymore, not going to play the role of the emotional punching bag anymore, they panic. They can't process your growth, so they label it betrayal. They can't digest your strength, so they call it cruelty. But let me break a lie right now. You're not cruel for going quiet. You're not cold for choosing peace. You're not heartless for refusing to explain yourself one more time. What you are is done. You've finally reached the moment where protecting your energy matters more than proving your intentions. And to them, that's the most terrifying thing in the world, because it means they're no longer in control. People who feel guilty will do anything to flip the script. They'll paint your distance as damage. They'll whisper to others, I don't know what happened, they just stopped caring. But they know. Deep down, they know. They just can't handle the fact that you found the strength to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. It's going to feel strange at first. You'll want to explain. You'll feel the urge to text that long message just to be clear. You'll rehearse a conversation in your head that you know will never happen. Why? Because for so long, your identity was tied to being understood, and silence feels like losing. But it's not. It's not giving up. It's letting go. It's the beginning of your healing. And that's why it hurts. But you've got to rise above that lie, the one that says your silence is weakness, the one that says if you don't speak, you'll be forgotten. The truth is, you are never more powerful than when you decide that your peace is worth more than their guilt trip, that your calm is worth more than their confusion, that your future is worth more than their apology that will never come. You are not the villain for choosing not to react. You're the warrior who laid down his sword, not because he lost, but because he finally saw the battlefield for what it was, rigged, exhausting, and undeserving of his fight. And you want to know something wild? The moment you go silent, they'll listen harder. They'll start watching your moves, reading into your quiet, wondering what you're thinking. Because silence, real silence, shakes people. It forces them to fill in the blanks with their own guilt. And that's far louder than anything you could ever say. They'll think about it over and over, at night in the quiet, when the show is over and their mask slips off. That's when your silence will come roaring back into their mind. Not your words, not your explanations, just the memory of you choosing to walk away without looking back. So don't chase, don't explain, don't stoop. Stand tall, stay silent, and let them drown in the echo of the respect they lost. And if you're sitting there right now, wondering if your silence is making you look like the bad guy, let me remind you of something that could save your soul. The people who truly care about you won't need you to scream for them to hear you, and the ones who blame you for going quiet were never listening to begin with. Silence isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of self-respect, and if they call that cold, then maybe they were never ready for the warmth you brought to begin with. Say this with me right now. Comment it. Show the world. Show yourself. My silence burns brighter than their lies. Because this is just the start. Stay with me. The guilt they try to hide, it's unraveling, and what's coming next, they'll never see it coming. Number 2, guilt is a parasite, and silence starves it. Guilt doesn't need your words to die, it just needs your silence to stop breathing. Let's be real, my friends. Guilt is like a parasite. It latches onto people, feeds on denial, and multiplies in noise. And when you were still explaining yourself, defending your choices, proving your worth, that parasite had room to grow. It thrived in the chaos, in the arguments, in the emotional tornado they kept spinning. But then, you stopped talking, you stepped out of the storm, and just like that, their parasite started starving. Because guilt can only survive when someone else is carrying the weight of it, and you finally dropped it. Have you ever seen someone desperately try to spark a fight with you? Throwing out insults, twisting facts, poking your insecurities, just to get a reaction? That's not strength, that's survival. They're not fighting to win, they're fighting to distract. Because the second you don't respond, the second you go still, all that energy turns inward. And guess what lives inside? Guilt, shame, the truth. And it starts clawing at them from the inside out. Imagine a stage with two actors, one screaming, crying, blaming, making a scene, the other just still, silent, calm. The audience starts to shift. They begin to question who's really the problem, because silence has that effect. It exposes the one who can't stop performing. That's why your silence is dangerous. That's why they hate it. It makes them look at themselves, and deep down, they don't like what they see. See, guilt doesn't go away when people get closure. It goes away when they stop running, and most don't want to stop. That's why they want you to break the silence. Not because they care how you feel, but because they can't handle how they feel. They want you to yell so they don't have to hear their own conscience screaming. They want you to argue so they can call you dramatic. They want you to chase so they can convince themselves they still matter. But silence. Silence ruins that entire script. Here's the brutal truth. Your silence becomes their prison, not because you locked them in it, but because they built it and finally have to sit in it alone. They'll replay what they did, the words they said, the way they left you bleeding and walked away like nothing happened. And without your reaction to soothe their ego, their own guilt will start whispering in ways they can't ignore. But don't get this twisted. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about making them suffer. This is about breaking the cycle. You're not going quiet to hurt them. You're going quiet to heal you, to reclaim the time, the energy, the peace that they drained from you. Every word you don't say is a drop of fuel back in your tank. Every message you don't send is one more brick in the wall you're building between who you were and who you're becoming. And yeah, it's going to be tempting, especially when they start reaching out again. Suddenly, you're getting a random, hey, a subtle guilt trip, a fake apology dressed in vague words like, I just want peace. But make no mistake, they don't want peace. They want relief from the guilt, from the silence, from themselves. But it's not your job to rescue them from their own reflection. Let them sit with it, because here's what they don't want you to know. They expected your anger. They even expected your tears. What they never expected was your evolution, that you'd go silent and build something in that silence, that you'd get stronger without them watching, that your silence wouldn't just be a pause, but a rebirth. And my friends, you don't owe them front row seats to that. So let them squirm, let them wonder, let the silence grow until it echoes every mistake they pretended didn't happen. You're not cruel, you're not vengeful, you're just done feeding their illusion. And that's enough to break everything they thought they had control over. Right now, say it with me, type it, own it, comment it. My silence starves their guilt. Because when you stop talking, you start winning. When you stop defending, you start rising. And in that space where they once fed on your energy, you're finally breathing again. Stay with me, because this guilt, this parasite, it's not done unraveling yet. And you, my friend, haven't even reached your full silence yet. Number 3, They can't heal, so they'll try to hurt you again. Wounded people don't always want healing. They want company in their pain. Here's what most folks don't realize. Silence doesn't just make them feel ignored. It makes them feel exposed. And when someone's carrying guilt they can't process, they don't seek healing. They seek distraction. They seek control. And when you no longer give them either, they panic. That's when the cycle restarts. Not because they miss you, but because they miss how you used to make their guilt go quiet. They can't sit still with the truth of what they did. So they'll come back around, not with honesty, not with remorse, but with strategy. A little dig, a sarcastic post, a memory they suddenly bring up out of nowhere. They'll poke, jab, hint, or try to joke their way back in. Why? Because if they can get you to react, even just a little, they win. Your reaction, even if it's anger, gives them oxygen. It tells them the door is still open. It tells them they still matter. It tells them they've still got you on some level. That's the drug they're chasing. But let me drop something heavy on your chest. The moment you stop reacting is the moment they start unraveling. You've heard it before. Hurt people hurt people. But let's go deeper. Unhealed people provoke healed people just to avoid looking at their own wounds. Because your silence, your calm, your refusal to be baited, it threatens the entire narrative they've built about themselves. And that's terrifying. They'll try to restart the argument, reopen the old conversation, reignite the same fight you already buried in your mind. Not because there's something left to resolve, but because you've stopped giving them access to your peace. And your peace reminds them just how chaotic they still are. They'll call it closure, they'll call it honesty, but you'll feel it. That subtle shift, that emotional bait. It's not love. It's guilt dressed up like curiosity. See, what they really want is proof that they didn't mess up as badly as they think they did. And if you scream, if you break, if you cry, then they get to believe they still matter. But when you don't flinch, when you look them dead in the eyes, or don't even look at all and keep walking, that's when their reality hits. That's when they realize the door's not locked, it's just gone. And I get it. It's hard. The mind plays tricks. You hear their voice in your head. You remember the good times. Your ego wants closure. Your heart wants justice. But listen to me. You don't need to get even with someone who's already battling themselves. The person who betrayed you is already hurting. The person who ghosted you is already haunted. The one who laughed when you cried has already lost something far greater than your presence. They lost your respect. You have to resist the urge to re-enter the battlefield just to prove you're no longer wounded. You don't need to prove anything to anyone who couldn't see your worth the first time. That's not healing, that's performance. And you're done performing. Here's the thing, they're not reaching out to make peace. They're reaching out to feel powerful. And when you don't engage, when you hold your silence like a shield, they start to spiral. Because guilt needs noise to survive. And you're not making noise anymore. You're building, you're rising, you're growing in ways they'll never witness again. And that's the part that eats them alive. They'll say you're cold, they'll say you're distant, but what they really mean is, I don't recognize the version of you that doesn't need my validation. They'll say you've changed, but what they mean is, you no longer let me manipulate you. That's not coldness, that's clarity. That's what happens when a man or a woman stops confusing kindness with compliance. So let them throw their tantrum, let them accuse, let them post their indirect quotes. Don't flinch, don't explain, don't take the bait. You already won when you chose peace over proving your point. Say it with me, right now. Type it in the comments. Let the world know they can't hurt what's healed. Because when you stop reacting, you stop bleeding. When you stop explaining, you stop shrinking. And when you stop engaging, you start winning. Stay with me, because what comes next? That's when they realize the silence isn't temporary. It's permanent. And that's when everything they buried starts crawling back to the surface. Number 4, the narrative. Flip from victim to villain. When they can't control how you feel, they'll try to control how others see you. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book and one of the hardest pills to swallow. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop playing their game, the moment you finally walk away without a word, suddenly you're not the one who was hurt. Now you become the heartless one, the fake one, the villain, and they rewrite the entire story with themselves as the poor, innocent victim who just wanted clarity. This is what happens when guilty people are left alone with silence. They panic, and instead of sitting with the truth, they run to rewrite it. They'll say, "You ghosted me," not "I pushed them away." They'll say, "They changed," not "They finally woke up to how I treated them." You stopped bleeding for them, and somehow they still find a way to make that your fault. Why? Because guilt doesn't like silence. It hates the echo of accountability, and if they can't manipulate you anymore, they'll manipulate the people around you. Friends, family, social media. Suddenly there's a new narrative floating around, one where you're the villain who shut them out, the one who became toxic, the one who couldn't communicate. Not because it's true, but because it's useful. It gives them a way out. It gives them a shield against their own shame. And let's be honest, that stings, especially if you're someone who once gave them your whole heart, someone who fought to be understood, someone who bent until you broke just to keep the peace. Now you're watching them wear a mask they never earned while you're still wiping the dirt off your name. But I'm here to tell you something you need to hear. You don't need to defend yourself in a room you no longer sit in. Because here's the trap. The moment you try to set the record straight, you're pulled right back into the chaos you escaped. The second you defend yourself, you've already lost. Not because you're wrong, but because you gave them what they wanted, your energy. And that energy, that's their lifeline. That's what keeps the lie alive. Because now it's not about the truth, it's about attention. And the more you feed it, the bigger the lie grows. But silence? Silence is the truth's best friend. It doesn't argue, it doesn't defend, it just waits. And trust me, the truth always outlives the lie. You just have to be strong enough to let the lie die a slow death, on its own, without your help. Now let's go deeper. Why does this hurt so much? Because you're not just grieving the person, you're grieving the way they're trying to erase your side of the story. It feels like erasure, like you never mattered, like the love you gave meant nothing. But here's the truth. Their lies don't erase your truth. Their gossip doesn't rewrite your growth. And their version of the story doesn't define your character. Only you get to do that. They can call you whatever they want, but you know the nights you didn't sleep. You know the tears they never saw. You know the grace you gave them long after they stopped deserving it. And that's what separates you. That's why you're rising. That's why you're silent. Not because you're bitter, but because you're free. Let them talk. Let them twist it. Because every time they speak, they reveal more about themselves. And every time you stay silent, you reveal more about your strength. You don't need to prove you were good to someone who only saw your silence as rejection. You don't need to clear your name for people who were never listening. You don't need to lower your volume just because their guilt is screaming louder. That's their storm, not yours. And here's the part that really burns them. When their story stops working. When people start to notice the cracks. When they ask, if they were really the problem, why are they so peaceful now? Why haven't they said anything back? Why aren't they fighting? That's when their fake narrative starts falling apart. And that's when silence becomes your greatest ally. Say it out loud, own it, comment it. I don't fight lies, I outgrow them. Because you don't have to defend who you are when your peace speaks louder than their performance. You're not the villain, you're the escape artist. You left the play, took off the costume, and never looked back. And the longer you stay gone, the more they'll realize your silence wasn't an attack. It was an exit, and they were the reason for it. Stay with me, because next, we'll talk about what your silence is really protecting, and why they fear that peace more than any words you could ever say. Number 5, silence is your boundary, not your weapon. Sometimes, the strongest thing you'll ever say is nothing. Let's make one thing crystal clear, my friends. Your silence isn't about them. It's about you. It's not revenge. It's not a tactic. It's not some manipulative trick to make them chase you. It's your boundary, your line in the sand, your way of saying, I've had enough. I'm done explaining pain to the person who caused it. But here's the twist they never expected, because they've spent their whole lives thinking silence is punishment, that you're trying to get back at them, that you're withholding affection like a weapon, because that's how they operate. That's how they played the game. That's how they used silence to control you, to keep you guessing, to make you beg. But now the roles have shifted and your silence feels different, colder, final, powerful, because it doesn't come from weakness, it comes from wisdom. And they can't handle that kind of silence. Let's break this down with a metaphor. Imagine you're standing in front of a locked door. Behind that door is chaos, confusion, gaslighting, guilt, all of it. And for years, you've been shouting through that door, begging them to open it, to hear you, to understand. But now, you're done knocking. You've turned around and you're walking away. And that silence, the footsteps fading, is the only thing they hear. And suddenly, they panic, because they were never afraid of your voice. They were afraid of your absence. Still, they'll try to twist it. You're avoiding me. You're giving me the silent treatment. You're playing games. And it's almost laughable, isn't it? The people who ghosted you now accuse you of disappearing. The ones who broke you down now call you heartless. That's what happens when you stop participating in their circus. You become the villain in the story they're desperate to tell. But don't let that shake you, because this silence isn't a punishment. It's a protection. It's your way of saying, I love myself too much to stay in a place that starves me. You're not being cold. You're being clear. You're not holding a grudge. You're holding your ground. And let me tell you why this is hard. Because some part of you still wants to explain, still wants to say, that's not why I went silent. That's not the full story. But hear this. People who wanted to understand you already would have. Silence is not for those who misunderstood your voice. It's for you to finally hear your own. You don't need to make noise to prove your growth. You don't need to speak just to soften their guilt. You are not responsible for how they process the consequences of their own actions. You are only responsible for the peace you fought so hard to create. And I get it. When you've spent your whole life justifying your silence, it feels unnatural to just let it stand. But let it. Let the silence speak for itself. Because silence is not empty. It's sacred. It's space. It's self-respect. It's the pause between who you were and who you're becoming. They'll feel it. Trust me, even if they don't say a word, they feel it. The distance, the difference, the power shift. Your silence is no longer fragile, it's forged. Forged in every moment you swallowed your pride, every time you wiped your own tears, every time you realized that your peace isn't up for debate anymore. That's what they fear, that they no longer have a vote in your life, that their voice no longer reaches your heart, that their presence no longer shakes your world. And they'll try. Oh, they'll try to get back in. But this time your silence won't be hesitation. It'll be confirmation. So don't explain, don't respond, don't negotiate with guilt. Let your silence build a wall so high, only those who truly honor your peace are allowed over it. Say it with me now, out loud, in the comments. Make it your oath. My silence protects my peace. Because you're not playing games, you're setting standards. And the louder they cry about your silence, the clearer it becomes. They were never ready for someone who finally stopped playing small. Stay with me, because what comes next, that's where we don't just hold the boundary, we rise beyond it. Number 6, watch their confidence crack in the quiet. A fragile ego doesn't collapse when you yell, it collapses when you say nothing. Let's talk about what really happens when you go silent, not just surface-level quiet, but that deep, powerful silence that says, "You no longer have access to me." At first, they laugh, they post, they pretend, they act unbothered. But pay close attention, because behind that staged confidence is a slow unraveling. You're not watching someone who has moved on. You're watching someone trying to outrun their own guilt, and your silence is the echo chasing them. See, some people don't want closure. They want a reaction. They want chaos. They want proof that they still hold emotional power over you. And when they don't get it, when they don't hear from you, don't see you breaking down, don't feel your energy rushing to validate them, they start to panic, quietly, internally. But make no mistake, it's happening. At first, they might double down, smile wider, post more, flaunt someone new, drop little breadcrumbs hoping you'll pick them up. They might even say things like, "I'm so glad I moved on," or "I'm happier than ever now." But you and I both know that happiness doesn't need to announce itself on a stage. That's not joy, it's performance. And performances are for audiences. But you've already left the theatre. You're not clapping anymore. And that's silence. It's deafening to someone who thrives on applause. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine they're standing on a shaky platform built entirely on your attention, your validation, your need to explain. And for a while, they felt tall, confident, in control. But now you've walked away, taken back your power. And the platform? It's cracking, slowly, quietly. Because when the foundation is false, silence isn't just empty, it's destructive. They start to second-guess everything. Why aren't they reaching out? Why aren't they fighting back? Why do I feel like I'm the only one still thinking about this? That's the power of silence. It rewrites the entire emotional script, and the longer you stay silent, the louder their mind gets. They begin to feel the emptiness they tried to cover up with noise. Here's something nobody tells you. People who wrong you aren't afraid of losing you. They're afraid of you realizing that you never needed them. And silence, that's the announcement that you finally did. That's the message they can't ignore. You didn't block them. You didn't rage. You just disappeared. You became unreachable, not because you're hiding, but because you're healing. And that, my friends, is what shatters their confidence, because confidence built on control dies when the control is gone, and yours is. It's gone. You're not checking their stories, you're not decoding their messages, you're not spinning in circles trying to prove your worth. You're focused on yourself now, on rebuilding, on rising, and that's the one thing they never expected. They expected a war, you gave them silence. They expected drama, you gave them distance. They expected weakness, you gave them disinterest. And maybe deep down, they thought they'd always have a hold on you. That no matter how badly they treated you, you'd always come back to try to fix things. But you didn't. You vanished. Like smoke from a bridge they thought you'd never burn. And now they stand there, looking at empty ashes, wondering how they lost someone who used to give so much. They'll try to rebuild that false confidence. They'll say things to mutual friends. Maybe they'll even reach out again, pretending nothing happened. But here's where your power grows, when you don't even flinch, when you don't even reply, when you know that every second of silence isn't just a boundary, it's a reminder. You are no longer available for disrespect. Period. Say it out loud, right now. Comment it below. Show them. Show yourself. My silence cracked their illusion. Because you didn't need to yell to be heard. You didn't need to prove they were wrong. You just had to stop showing up. And the moment you did, everything they thought they built started to crumble. Not because you hurt them, but because they finally had to feel what it was like to live without your light. Stay with me, because what's coming next isn't just silence, it's transformation. Number 7, you don't need to clear your name. Time will do it. The truth doesn't rush. It just waits. And when it arrives, it doesn't need to explain itself. There comes a moment on your healing journey where you have to make peace with being misunderstood. And that, my friend, is one of the hardest parts of silence. You're no longer in the room where they're talking about you. You're no longer defending yourself in the group chat. You're not sending paragraphs to clarify your side of the story. And they know it. That's why they're talking louder, because you're no longer present to lower your voice. It's wild, isn't it? The moment you go quiet, the narratives start to form. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. And people love a blank canvas. They'll paint you as bitter, cold, disconnected. They just cut me off. They think they're better now. They ghosted me for no reason. But what they never mention is the chaos you endured in silence before you ever walked away. The conversations you tried to have, the apologies you never received, the nights you cried in private, trying to hold something together that was already rotting at the core. They don't talk about that part, do they? But here's what you must understand deep in your bones. You don't need to clear your name with people who were never listening to your truth in the first place. You don't need to put out a statement. You don't need to fight their fiction, because truth doesn't show up in defense. It shows up in results, in evolution, in the way you walk now, calmer, stronger, lighter. Let me give you something to hold on to. Picture this, a courtroom, but not the kind you see in movies. This one is invisible. It's built in the minds of those who doubted you, and every silent step you take forward, every moment you didn't clap back, every opportunity you took to rebuild quietly, every time you chose peace over war, becomes evidence. Not evidence you submit, but evidence time submits for you. And eventually, even the ones who once questioned you will say, maybe they weren't the villain after all. Or maybe they'll never say it out loud. Maybe they'll just watch and know. Because while they've been obsessed with retelling the past, you've been busy rewriting your future. And the best part, you haven't said a word. You didn't interrupt their story. You just stopped participating in it. And that silence became the loudest declaration you've ever made. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what if people believe them? What if I'm seen as the one who gave up? Let them. Let them believe what they need to believe to sleep at night. Let them create whatever story helps them avoid accountability. Because the people who really know you, the ones who've seen your heart, your loyalty, your effort, they don't need an explanation. And the ones who believe lies so easily, they were never on your side to begin with. This is the part that takes discipline, the part where you want to scream your truth into the void. But don't. Not because you're weak, but because you've outgrown the need to be seen by those who refused to see you when it mattered. Your energy is too precious to be spent correcting liars. Your peace is too sacred to be traded for attention. Let time do what it does best, reveal everything. And it will, in ways you never imagined. One day they'll scroll past your name, and it'll hit them, not because of what you posted, but because of what you didn't. One day someone will bring you up in a conversation, and their eyes will drop to the floor. Because they'll remember how they treated you, and they'll know the truth, even if they never say it. That's what silence does. It haunts, it humbles, it heals. And you just keep building, keep walking, keep living in a way that makes their version of you impossible to believe. Because your life, your light, your presence, it'll speak for itself. So don't waste another second writing letters to people who would have tossed them in the trash anyway. Don't waste your breath on people who held their hands over their ears when you were crying out for understanding. You are not responsible for correcting their guilt-stained version of your story. You are responsible for living a life that renders it irrelevant. Right now, write this in the comments and let it echo across the silence they gave you. Time speaks louder than lies. If you've ever been painted as the villain simply because you refuse to keep bleeding for people who didn't care if you healed, this is your moment. Press the like button, hit subscribe. Join this movement of silent warriors who no longer fight to be understood, because we understand ourselves. And that, my friend, is the final freedom.